Hello and welcome everyone to the Movement Made Better podcast. Today, our guest, friend of Trina Altman's, Catherine Cowey. Catherine, thank you very much for coming on. We'll turn it over to you to give a little background on yourself, please.
Yeah. So, like you said, name is Catherine Cowey. I have been training for 25 plus years probably now. I've been doing this a while. Started out sort of in the ATC realm, working with athletes, but I was always doing personal training, making money through school. And I just found I always really liked doing the personal training and found I had a lot of influence on people. And you could, stay with them, PT, physical therapy, ATC, you didn't have much time with people. And so I really started liking through personal training, you could really have an impact on somebody. And then the last 5 to 10 years or so, started looking at this idea of hypermobility, realized, that's the reason everybody when I'm in seminars is going, what are you doing with that? So always found I had much more range than everybody else. So then started delving into hypermobility, looking at all the research, finding out about Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is one of the extreme forms of hypermobility. And then realized that not many people are being helped with this. There is not much, there's not much clinical research. And then there's just not much past physical therapy of what these people need to do. So all the people I see are just at a loss. They just don't know what to do. And it's compounded by so many of the symptoms. We can talk about all the stuff that goes along with hypermobility. It's super, super complex. So they come to me pretty they're pretty done, pretty helpless. So, and just not much resource. There's not much information out there. So that's why I'll do any of these podcasts. I'm any way I can get out the information. I want to help people and help get the right information and good information.
Is there a higher occurrence of hypermobility than maybe we think there is?
I think so. I was just talking to someone the other day saying a lot of the people that were probably diagnosed with fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, I think a lot of those people 15, 20 years ago, I think a lot of them actually were probably most likely EDS folks. So in the literature, it's 15 to 20% of people who have some form of hypermobility.
Okay.
It's maybe about 4 to 5% of people who actually that would be diagnosed with EDS. A lot of people don't go through the diagnostic process because it can be a little time consuming. But I just had one person I knew who, for her, it wasn't, he just went through the stuff and said, yes, you probably have EDS. So, but helping them after that can take, it's rheumatologists, cardiologists, orthopedic, it's a lot of different doctors, different clinicians.
What are some long-term, maybe detrimental things that can occur if you're out of hypermobility?
Well, it is a long-term, lifelong thing that people will be dealing with. Again, there's a dearth of research on these people and on this question. I'm finding just in my own clinical practice, people can be high functioning, in their 20s and their 30s, they can be pretty good. I've personally again, it's my bias. This is what I'm seeing right now. I have a bunch of 40 and 50-year-olds who are not doing great in their fourth and fifth decades. Pain is getting worse. They're more symptomatic. If they have dysautonomic stuff or blood pressure issues, that can be more symptomatic and give them more issues. But it's a lifelong of multi-symptom and multi-system, many, many systems being affected.
So we're looking at more than just the joint here then.
So I can give a very brief synopsis on what you have. Again, it's called hypermobility spectrum disorders. Someone asked the definition on a podcast one time and I was like, oh, it's so hard. I was thinking about it the other day. And I was thinking, okay, there's this group of people that have a greater than average amount of range of motion in their joints. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. There is that group of people. That's maybe that 20%. Then there can be most of them, 10% or so, can be completely fine. They can be doing contortionists till they're 90 years old and they're like, woohoo, I'm great. Cirque du Soleil forever. So... and they're super high functioning. They're fine. Then then you have the folks that are really low functioning and they're very, very symptomatic. They're definitely most likely diagnosed with EDS. And they have a lot of issues. I'll talk about that in a second. But then there are people kind of in the middle who maybe, like a lot of the clients that I have, are pretty high functioning. They've found that, I'm all sort of Gumby. But I deal with, before they might not, they didn't associate it with hypermobility. There's fatigue that can be IBS issues. There's heart issues, blood pressure issues, sleep apnea, mitral valve prolapse, if I hadn't said that already.
Wow.
There's a slew, because if there is a collagenous, EDS, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, is termed as a collagenous disorder.
Okay.
I think for some people who might not be, diagnosed specifically with EDS, they might still have some collagenous stuff going on. And collagen is everywhere, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
In our guts, it's in our heart, it's in our vascular system, it's in our blood vessels. So our blood vessels, they stretch out, they might not snap back. So our blood pressure doesn't pressure, because we don't have that squeeze back and push the blood back. So a lot of them have POTS, which is postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, basically lightheadedness. They go from lying down to standing and go, ooh, right? So that a lot of them are diagnosed with POTS as well. So that's sort of the very brief synopsis of kind of what people can experience. But I always like to tell people, like, we shouldn't pathologize all people who are Gumby. They might just be completely fine.
Yeah.
Because there's so many different factors with flexibility of why we have flexibility. It might be just that randomly my ligaments in that shoulder are really stretched out, and my bone allows me to go that way. So that it could have nothing to do technically with collagen. It's just like, oh, that's just the way my shoulders do. And there's nothing systemically they have issues with.
Because strength training with hypermobility is something that I think the average trainer doesn't know what steps or procedures or precautions they should take.
Yeah. So the way I've had a lot of new people recently, I've got like 3 or 4 new people, and kind of the steps, I've started to basically give them steps. The one thing I want to say, caveat before this, is pain is a huge, fatigue and pain are actually the 2 biggest symptoms with this population. You first have to address and educate on pain when you're dealing with hypermobility. Because most likely, again, there's those high functioning, but most of them that I deal with, again, I have my bias, I deal with folks who have a lot of pain. So I have to first work a lot with pain, and pain, obviously, it's a biopsychosocial model, right?
Yeah.
What's going on in their life? What's going on in their psychology? What the biology, psychology, and social stuff of what's going on in their life will affect whether they're in pain or not. So sometimes they'll go, yeah, it's my hip. I'm like, well, is there also, did you just lose your dog, lose your job? Did your dog die? And, is your mother driving you crazy, right? Like, if you have those things coming into the body, there's nothing different in the body. It's just you have less tolerance for whatever is going on, right? Mm-hmm. So I have to describe to them that. So then you have to get over them being in pain in order to strength train, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right. So deal with the pain first, and or, it's not going to go away, but they have to manage any pain stuff that they have. So then with the strength stuff, very, very slowly going into stuff, I will maybe give people like 3 exercises, and I'll be like, do this twice a week, like very, very low volume, low intensity, and just slowly introduce it, right? Again, depending on their background, right? If they were like strength trainers before, you can be a little bit more gung-ho with it. But if I have someone who's been doing Pilates for 20 years and hasn't looked at a weight in, 30, I'm like, okay, we're going to go slow about this.
Yeah.
Isometrics are huge,
Nice.
right? We all know, right? All the tendon, Jill Cook's stuff, Ebony Rio, all of their research, huge in terms of bolstering up the joint, the ligaments, all that good stuff. So like the other day, had someone like kind of going into a slight squat. So my knee is niggling a little bit. It's talking to me. And, I was just like, okay, fine. We're going to go to the wall. So supported her against something. Okay. Put a knee between her legs. Like gave her tons of references. Just go against the wall, push against here, hold that position for 30 seconds. Right. Do that twice. Maybe I can go back to the squat. Maybe it feels fine now. Like it can be instantaneous. You can get pain relief and have an analgesic effect from just that one bout of isometrics. So that's like kind of in practice, like during a session, how I would do strength training. It's strength training, hugely important. I think one thing that definitely needs to be understood with most of my hypermobiles is decreasing, again, that volume. Not like they're like, I'm doing 3 times a week and I'm just done. I'm tired. And they can't get anywhere because they can't get the intensity for the times that they're doing the strength training. So I like twice a week, maybe 20-minute, 30-minute session. You can get a lot of bang for your buck in just that amount. And they'll get stronger. I've lots of clients. You just go slower about it, less intensity. A 4-week plan program that you would maybe do for a normal person, you might be on a 6-week program because it'll take 6 weeks for that body to maybe figure out stuff, for their body to accustom to it. And they might have one of those weeks they were in pain and they couldn't do much, or, it's constantly kind of, they're going up, but there's a lot of blips in the going up.
Long duration isometrics is such a huge benefit. We think it's really vastly overlooked by the majority of the fitness industry as far as the benefits of what it can do for people.
Yeah. Depends on who you look at, right? I mean, right? Like,
yeah.
Fitness world, I'm like, okay, I'm going to look at these smart people. This other stuff I don't look at. But I recognize, I'm like, when I look outside those people, I'm like, oh God, no one's doing, no one knows about all this stuff. So it's like Cal Dietz and all the, with isometrics, and a lot of the sprint guys and strength guys and stuff. Yeah, they're all doing these. And there's the long duration. It's that 3-minute, 5-minute ISO. For this population, again, that I use more of the tendon research that Ebony Rios, that's like a 45-second to 60-second, 3 bouts. I think that's what it is. In Cook's research, in both of those guys' research, that you're getting the analgesic effect. So I'm going more for the analgesic effect. So that's what I use. I'm not going for performance of, sprint performance and Dietz at Minnesota or Michigan or whatever.
I still technically call even a 30-second or 40-second isometric long duration because to the client it seems like forever. They're like, oh my God. You're like, what is going on? You're like, okay. So that's the only reason why I still call it long duration, because my clients think it's hell. So.
For the client, 30 seconds is like, what? But yeah.
Dr. Keith Barr was saying that the difference between the 30 and 45 seconds and the 2 minutes isn't that significant, that you can get a huge benefit from just doing that 30 to 45 second.
Yeah, exactly. I think Joel Smith had him on a podcast, and he's got some fantastic information. But I know Keith Barr has done a lot of good stuff. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, because I think hypermobile people need to understand the importance of training the collagen and training the connective tissue.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. We have to use any trick in the book to try to bolster that collagen, because genetically, for those people who have a collagenous issue, genetically that collagen, we're not like, I don't have a CRISPR to make their genes better.
Right. Yeah.
If I could do that, I don't know, maybe they will be able to do that, in 5 years. But so far, I don't have that for my clients. So I contacted Keith Barr one time because I was interested in, he never got back to me, but but I wanted to see that research that he did of giving people an hour before the bout. Have you seen that one? It was an hour before the bout. He gave them a collagen shot, basically.
Okay.
Like a Jello shot of just straight collagen. It was an hour before a bout of maybe 30 seconds of jumping rope or something. And that literally the tendon sucked up the collagen that you had just drank, right?
Mm-hmm.
That research I thought was pretty amazing. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Would that still help a hypermobile? But I couldn't get an answer.
Oh, interesting.
No, but it's an interesting idea, right?
Yeah. Well, because as climbers were, especially with Neil, he's listening to reading articles and listening about how to strengthen the connective tissue, because of it is so crucial in the sport of climbing. But that carryover to everything else is right there also.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. The nutrition part, right? Because that's not my area of expertise. I've always kind of wanted to find somebody who there is probably nutritional aspects that could help you, that could possibly help bolster the collagen. But again, my question was always if there's a deficit in the genetic makeup of the basically forming the collagen, then how much is that helping? That's where my question was, which I still don't have an answer to that.
Is there usually some type of mental barrier that clients have in regards to strength training that you have to overcome?
Yes, there can be, because a lot, again, this is just my clients and people I've talked to. Many of my clients either went to trainers who didn't know what they were doing, and so they've been injured a lot, and they do have huge history of injury. I have people who've had 5 injuries. Their thumbs dislocate when they look at them wrong, right? I've had, like, there's really hypermobile where you have to modify all the time. So they can be scared. Like, there's that kinesiophobia, they can be scared of doing anything. I have sort of the benefit of going, no, I'm one of you. I'm one of you zebras. Like, and so they sort of impart, so they'll be like, okay, I trust you. Okay. And then because of the way that I go super slow, and a lot of my stuff is breathing initially, because I got to bring down their sympathetic nervous system, and then breathing, right? The PRI, if you guys are familiar with postural. Yeah. So a lot of my stuff is informed by them as well, and position, and we're bags of air and liquid, basically. So we use those bags of liquid and air to push around to get a joint to get in the right position. And when I use those tactics, they're like, oh, it feels better. And I haven't even started the strength training yet, right? All I've done is breathe in different positions. And so I can get them out of that pain and just that relief. Then I can be like, okay, I just want you to maybe try this. Okay. How's that feel? Oh, it's okay. Okay, great. Let's do something else, right? And so it's just slowly, right, bringing them. I've had someone who even with the breathing, right, she had a history of panic attack, history of like being freaked out by breathing. And because I sort of like got it in here and there and just had her start breathing a little bit at times and sort of weaving it in, but not jumping right into it and going, okay, exhale, completely hold it out, right? I carefully, slowly brought it in. And so then she was able to get the breathing practice as well. Yeah, it can be a lot of, because they have a panic anxiety disorder as well, because that sympathetic nervous system is so ramped up.
Yeah, and it's important to get people out of that. So that's a great point there.
Yeah, it's that low-hanging fruit. I got to deal with the low-hanging fruit before you can attack strength training. Like, I can't get anywhere if I can't. If you can't get them out of pain, fear, all that stuff.
I think that's one thing that I wish I would have been taught more of when I first got into the industry, is the importance of getting people to fix this much before all of this.
Yes. Yeah. And it's hard because, right, we have scope of practice, right? And so and a lot of times I'll just mention it and I'll say, I don't know if you've heard of something called an ACE score. She's actually local. The woman who looked at this, she looked at a lot of it in Bayside, because you guys are in San Jose, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. So she's a doctor in working with a lot of people in Bayside. And so it's adverse childhood experiences. So it's called this ACE score. It's Nadine Burke. It's their name. The book is called The Deepest Well. If you have people who have if they already have EDS, many of them also have trauma history as well. And how much trauma is manifested and somaticized in the body. And so that I will just mention it and say, are you in psychotherapy? You might want to look at that, right? So that then they can go out, they can go take care of that on that level. And then I know that's being addressed. So they can address that. Most of my people are already probably on an anti-anxiety, probably already done therapy. There's a lot of, because especially Bay Area, everyone's got a therapist. But they're pretty well versed in that. But if they don't happen to be someone who is, then I will definitely say, like, you might want to take care of that trauma stuff and that history, because it lives in our body. And then it also lives in the brain, in that amygdala. So that whole cascade, they can change their brain to not be sensing pain all the time, because living in that trauma realm increases or decreases tolerance to pain, right? It increases that pathway to always a message of being sent of fear and pain and all that stuff.
So we've heard of some basic joint tests, like if you can touch your thumb to your wrist, if when you extend your arm, it goes the other way. Same thing, extending your knee. Is that too simplistic of a test to say that someone has hypermobility? Right.
So I always cover the Baton score, because everybody talks about it. When any article will bring up the Baton score, which that's what it is. 5 point. It's a total of 9 points. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4. right? The knees, 5, 6, right? So, and then the toe touch. So the Baton score, all I say is it's a piece of information. It kind of gives you, you're like, you might go, huh, okay, you can do all those things. And the full diagnostic criteria, they revamped it in 2017. There's definitely it's a more thorough diagnosis. And so it'll cover, I mean, there's questions like, did you used to do like crazy things when you like do crazy stuff with your body, right? When you were a kid? That's literally one of the questions, the diagnosis. But and then there's mitral prolapse. Did you have a primary parent who has it, right? So those are diagnosed with EDS. This type of stuff, it just shows you, okay, you got some lax joints. But again, it's only looking at those joints, looking at your hand, your pinky, your elbow, your knees, and your fold over. It could be their shoulders and their back and their ankles that are super loose. So it wouldn't have caught. You know, you could do the whole thing and you'd be like, oh, you're fine. But they have 3 or 4 other different things that are loose. So it's a piece of information, but as a trainer, you could then ask other things of, right, if they're fatigued all the time, if they have anxiety, if they have pain all the time, those are the other things that are big. That would probably show that they're more likely more of an EDS, a little bit of a more symptomatic EDS hypermobility. But it's a piece of information. It's part of the diagnostic criteria still. Yeah.
Okay.
If I'm a novice, let's say I'm a personal trainer, I've been in the industry 5-6 years. Let's say if I have a client that I feel is hypermobile, what are some 2 or 3 basic things that I need to always remember with these clients?
So maybe not a symptomatic person.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Actually, in essence, I would almost say with both of them, even if you have an asymptomatic person, they still have all of this range. Mm-hmm. So especially with the asymptomatic, if they're going in that range, you really, really want to make sure that they are strengthening that range. Mm-hmm. Okay. Right? Especially like I have a few friends who work with a lot of circus and acrobat and ballet, like any of those guys, they have really high functioning folks. So their slant on it is very different than mine. Okay. And they're like, okay, I need to, the circus folks, they're having extreme range. Woman Jen Crane, do you guys know her? No. She works with Cirque du Soleil folks. Cirque Physio or something is her handle on Instagram. Okay. So she works with mostly circus folks, and she just talks about strengthening that end range. You got to strengthen that end range. I'm still biased. I still think will a lot of those 25, 30, 35 year-old folks, right? What are they going to be at 40 and 50? Mm-hmm. I have a feeling it's 50% of those guys. I don't know how they're going to be feeling when they're in their 40s and 50s. That's just my opinion. Again, people will be like, I'm going to be fine. Maybe they will. I don't know. We don't know the research. Yeah. But in terms of getting back to your question, again, I think it's just those isometrics, right? Using isometrics because they bolster the collagen so much. I think that's across the board. Doing that again, end range because they have it. People who are very, very symptomatic, I actually don't so much go into end range because they just, especially if you're not the ballerina, if you don't want to hold on to your splits, it's just better to just stay in the mid ranges. Because a lot of the people that I'm dealing with right now, they have so much sort of instability in they'll feel my hip went out, my spine went out, in normal people, our SI joint doesn't go out. It moves 2 millimeters? Yeah. Right? Yeah. So in these guys, it might move more, but it does. It feels, you feel it as you feel a slide, you feel a lock, it does feel like something just went it's kind of profound when it happens in your body. So it does, I know how they feel. Probably not moving that much, who knows? But yeah, they have to bolster as much as they can. Using references all the time. Personally, for myself, sometimes if I'm doing squats and I'm just not feeling it that day, or maybe feeling a little more squirrely, I'll just squat to a bench. I'll maybe put a tubing around my knee or put a ball in between my knee. I just keep myself there, but I can still get the work in, get the work on the muscle, and are using, no one has the machines, gyms have the machines, but you can't go to gyms anymore. Awesome. But, one of my clients is like, should I just go to the gym and go on some of the, leg extension and hamstring curl? I'm like, you know what? I mean, for straight hypertrophy, putting just muscle and force on the tendons and ligaments, have at it. It keeps them in one position.
Mm-hmm.
May as well just, strengthen, right? We all went into like functional and this and that, but there's a time and place for old school bodybuilding Schwarzenegger stuff, right?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
very true. What about joint centration? I mean, is there, especially like for people that hyperextend at the knees or the elbows all the time?
That's that same idea of, right? Like if you're doing circus, go to that end range and strengthen that end range that you have. Yeah, it's totally beyond, right? Like this yoga teacher training that I teach sometimes, portion about hypermobility. We talk about co-contraction, right? Mm-hmm. Like if if you're here, you can maybe get a bicep and a tricep, but like just straight physics, I cannot get as good control of a joint when I'm hyperextending.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's just physics. Like they can't argue that any which way.
Yeah.
That's physics.
Yeah.
So fine, you're doing these crazy, circus tricks, but you have more control of a joint when it's just going to where it's supposed to go, right? It's harder for us to because we can't feel like exactly where that is sometimes. So I'm like, you have to look at it or give yourself literally a physical barrier of where it needs to go. Like put some barrier that arm is only going to go to that certain range to keep them, because sometimes they won't feel it. Mostly more in the knees than the elbows, but yeah.
Have you ever used any kinesio tape or rock tape to give that extra feedback?
So yeah, the K-tape stuff for just feeling, but I find the K-tape it's too flexy itself, right? So it all actually doesn't sometimes give you the feedback. Like I remember at one point I was just playing around and I was just masking tape.
Oh, okay.
Because it literally gave you an immediate, like, okay, You could tell exactly where you were. Because K-tape in general, I did a podcast on K-tape. I don't know whether you guys like K-tape or not, but the research isn't quite there. And if you find the popularity of K-tape came out in the year 2000, like he was using it before 2000, but in 2000 it was accepted by PT insurance. So physical therapy insurance would pay for the, administration of K-tape. And it went bonkers after it was, accepted by insurance companies. So now a physical therapist, of course, is like, give me another $50 for putting this stuff on them. And so then they started using it a lot more. So its popularity increased like at the same.
Oh, because of the monetary relationship. Quite interesting.
Yeah, it's like year 2000.
Yeah, sometimes you gotta follow the money.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always a thing, right? I mean, it's usually always a huge factor.
I mean, maybe the research has changed since I last looked at it. I'm always open to, if someone can come back and be like, yeah, no, I totally found, like, if somebody likes it and they like find it helps them mentally or something, and sometimes it can give you, if you put a ton of it on, it can maybe give someone a feel of their joints. Like one of my clients, she felt like I just put it on any which way. I was like, just let tape all over your knee. And she just felt her knee better. She's in for a knee replacement. So she, 65 years old, but it was just literally to give her psychological, like, oh, I feel my knee. Because we often don't feel, right? Our proprioception, right?
Yeah.
Is lacking a lot of the time for a lot of different reasons. That also, the research is still out there on why the reasons. Some of it actually might be the interface of the collagen with the nerve fibers might not be great. It also can just be a delay in signaling. All different theories on why we have a lack of proprioception.
So you were talking about blood pressure earlier, and I never thought about hypermobility affecting the cardiovascular system at all. How would you, I guess, go about training that aspect?
So the bolstering of that is, it's really, you do it by diet. It's obviously keeping fluids and lots of salt intake up. There's things called liquid IV, I think is one of the things. The new tablets, there's a bunch of different things that they can just take orally to keep up their blood volume, literally plasma volumes, right? Which will help keep blood pressure up a little bit more. Beyond that, there's fluorocortisone and midrodine, however you want to say it. Those are going to be gotten by a physician, right? Those are prescriptions. You can do stuff like the restrictive blood training. Have you guys done it?
BFR.
BFR. Yeah.
So that was fairly intriguing. The research on that is fairly intriguing. I did it for like a month, just trying it. I was like, okay, I don't know if I want to do this. Like, I didn't see that much of a difference.
Okay, you didn't know? Okay.
Yeah, but I only did it a month. I mean, it'd be interesting if I tried it a little bit more. And I don't know that I did it, but that I did it enough, right? I was maybe doing it once a week. I didn't do it like every session. Maybe I should try. I mean, I have the cuffs. I don't have like the whatever company has like the ones that you can do, like right?
Yes.
Like use it up. So that is an idea that people can use them, but again, for normal folks, like that they'll do that. It's not super comfortable, but actually for that population, right, you're able to do very low intensity, but still getting the hypertrophic effects just because of the metabolics that happens, right? The venous. And then also in terms of blood pressure, it might bolster the effect of the ability for your veins and arteries to work a little better. Yeah, it's just literally that the vessels just open up too much and that we don't have the ability to constrict. So the blood just doesn't go back to the head enough. I mostly, for myself and clients, I find it's just the deadlift that really gets me.
Yeah.
Right? It's that constriction while you're doing it. And then, and so all the blood just goes shrook. And so I just have, for myself, you just put your head between your knees and you're fine. Like you just, it's easy to ameliorate. So, and the main ways that it affects, it gives a lot of people brain fog and fatigue issues. So those are the two things in terms of lifestyle can be kind of a bummer. So, yeah.
But as far as cardiovascular intensity, is that something that you can really ratchet up on somebody that's hypermobile, or should you be pretty cautious about that?
No, it's because it's really, again, it's POTS. So it's postural.
Okay.
If you have someone who has POTS, they'll be like, swimming is better, recumbent bike is better because, right?
Yes.
That's why most hypermobiles, we actually sit like this. Like if we're on a chair, we'll bring our legs up like this because it's easier to regulate our blood pressure if we're all on one level.
Oh.
The second my legs go down, then I have to regulate more. And now I've just put all these vessels below me. So now my heart has to work to get the blood from my feet, which are below me, up. Right? So I'll go like this. That's better. So you'll see a lot of them in terms of literally behavior is being dictated by physiology.
Fascinating.
So yeah, I love when we find out the stuff that you're like, oh, that person's behavior is completely dictated by their biology and their physiology. Yeah.
I'm like going through my head about all the people I know that sit like that. I have a couple nephews that do that actually.
Yeah, I mean the boys have it too, right?
Yeah.
Some of them just do it. Some of them actually can be also an anxiety thing. So that's like the
compression
thunder, right?
Yeah.
Right. Those thunder vests for dogs or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So it's also that too for kids. They like to be here, but it can be a blood pressure thing. So, but in terms of cardiovascular, I haven't found. The only thing you might find, I haven't tested this with many of my clients because I usually don't I'm not doing cardio stuff with them.
Okay.
It's only on myself. When you have the dysautonomia, which is what actually a lot of these long haul COVID, I'm actually horrible that all these long haul COVID people have long haul COVID, but most of them, their viral load can give you dysautonomia, which is basically dysregulation of the autonomic nervous system, which is what we have to deal with all the time. Hopefully there'll be a lot more research because it's affecting all these people who have long haul COVID. But the dysautonomia you might have, so I can have my resting with sleeping will be like 41 beats per minute, right?
Okay.
But I can go running and my high heart rate can be 190, 196.
Whoa.
Right? So that's like a classic example of dysautonomic, right? You'd think, oh, my heart rate would get up very high, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm fit. And so I should have a good stroke volume in my heart, right? So I shouldn't have to beat so much, because that's what happens. The left ventricle, ventricular hypertrophy allows so that you just only have so many beats when I'm exercising, but not the case in someone with like a dysautonomia, because it's just not regulated.
And is that you sprinting or just like a?
No, that's fast. Like,
okay.
I mean, it's not a full, but like if I haven't gone full bore in a long time. Right?
Yeah.
When I did a VO2 in my 20s or something, my max heart rate was 212.
Wow.
Ooh.
Yeah. So 220 minus your heart, minus your age, not really so much.
Yeah.
No, thanks, Garvin, but not so much.
As far as backloaded squats would probably be something you would recommend or not recommend for hypermobile people?
No, in general, I mean, back squats if people don't like, front squats are so much safer.
Yeah.
And they're just, I don't have to do any other thing. I don't have to cue. I don't want to cue. Like,
yeah.
I probably do a lot of more cueing than I need to. But right, you put that load here, it keeps them from dumping forward. It keeps them from doing stupid stuff. So I usually almost always load. But again, I have to load different people, right? They have all sorts of different things going on. So I might have to put a bunch of towels on. Sometimes I can't even load them with a bar. I have to load them, I can put the belt mount in the middle and have the chain and have a kettlebell on there. That's right, the easiest, and it makes them not have to organize this portion of themselves. But most people, I'm trying. None of my hypermobiles right now. I have pretty symptomatic hypermobiles, so I just got one. She's finally 25 pounds on a little bar and starting her doing squats. She's never done squats before, but just introduced that. She's doing amazing, but it's real slow to get them to that. Some of them I never go to the bar, and it's just with a kettlebell, maybe just going to a bench, but they're still getting strength.
So are there any specific programs or courses that coaches could look at, or there's just nothing out there?
There is absolutely nothing. Yeah. I wanted to, do you know Katie St. Clair? She's an amazing.
I've heard of her.
Yeah, I've heard of her.
Yeah.
Great, amazing strength coach. I don't even know how she does half the things. Like if I did 1/10 of what she does, I would be like flat out on the ground. She does a lot of amazing stuff. She does a mentorship, empowered performance, I think for mostly women. I think now she added in men. So I almost wanted to kind of talk to her about because her good friend Jill Zimmerman, who's a PT, actually is hypermobile, pretty high functioning. I wanted to sort of play with them, of maybe setting something up that shows, because it's really low. I mean, for symptomatic folks, let's try to find a program that's twice a week. And maybe that third session would be something very, very light, maybe PRI stuff, or just maybe some isometrics. But I find very, very low volume. And again, really depends on the symptom. If you have somebody who's not symptomatic, just they can. You just have to see what they can handle. Depends on if someone has a ton of fatigue or not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're all very different.
Mm-hmm.
They all have a lot of these similar symptoms, but every single person, I have to I don't have some boilerplate thing. I don't have a Excel spreadsheet, because they're all so different. I would just be doing the same a different thing every time. I just do a Word doc that's describes exercises, because they're all so different. Every exercise will have slightly different cue, a slightly different thing here. It's also why I don't work with a lot of people, because it's a lot of energy that goes into them.
So hopefully we start to see more awareness. And that's the reason why I wanted to have you on, is because we know there are a lot of people that have these issues and have to learn how to manage hypermobility. I think it's underrated how many people are affected, but we'll see in the coming years.
And then a lot of your people, when I do, if I'm actually in person and can see the people, you sort of see eyes just kind of bug out when you start saying the symptoms. They're like, oh shit. They just realize, oh, I'm on anti-anxiety meds. God, I'm so fatigued all the time. I don't sleep very well. Yeah, I do kind of have some stomach issues. Oh gosh, I don't and then they have pain, or they've had a ton of surgeries, and they put it all together, and they're like, oh my gosh. So all of these other symptoms, they start to realize, but then they can, if they get educated, then they can sort of, it's not easy because they have to, okay, let's look at the nutrition. Okay, let's look at this. And you really have to bolster the system all the time. But really attacking that nervous system initially. Is it hypermobile yogis or something? She, Celeste Pereira or something like that. She had a post the other day. She's like, yep, okay, I got my blue light glasses. I gotta, for the sleep, right? She had her mouth guard on and this on and that on, all to like make it so that her sleep, right? I have black things on every light in my bedroom, like, black out everything, because you gotta manage the sleep. Yeah, and a lot of the people don't know that their sleep is so bad, right? So that's why, like, I tell people, if they want to, they're not totally cheap, but right, the Aura rings.
Oh yeah.
They've actually, I think, have been shown to be almost as accurate as a sleep study. It even does respiratory rate. I saw an article of how they did it. I'm like, is that accurate though?
Yeah, sometimes I kind of question that. I'm
do you have the Aura ring?
No. So it's like you said, when you read it, you're kind of like, I do that quite often. I'm like, I don't really know.
Yeah.
My watch does all that stuff. I'm not 100% sure if it's accurate though.
Yeah, the watches with especially the green light, right?
Yeah.
And then it has to be, like, I have the Garmin too. It is hugely inaccurate for my heart rate.
Really?
For my exercise and heart rate. At rest, it's okay, but hugely inaccurate. It would say like 140 and I would be like at 170. Like,
yeah, for sure. I'll always use the chest strap for the heart rate.
Yeah, you have to wear a chest strap. So just in that, I'm like, okay, it's obviously, and then anyone of color, the green light doesn't work. Like, it's shitty accuracy too. Like, oh gee, sorry, you're not as white as a sheet.
I'm gonna have to keep my arms out of the sun then.
I need better accuracy. I'm not.
Yeah. So have you found that your Garmin is that fairly accurate for your sleep compared to the Oura Ring? I'm curious because that's what I have.
For sleep. Like, I was like, this isn't going to do shit. Like,
okay.
I just stopped. And then I can't sleep with a big old thing on because my Garmin is huge. Like,
yeah.
So the thing can barely even, it's just, it bugged me at night. That's why I got this, because I was like, okay, I can handle just this ring. That's fine. I can do it.
So if people wanted to get a hold of you or follow you on social media, how do they go about doing that?
I'm on Instagram. I don't post as much. It's just like, I found it to be, bang for your buck in terms of like, I used it as an information platform, but put a bunch of stuff on there so they can go to that. There's a ton of posts with a ton of information. When I say in my head, like, okay, no, people should really have this information. Like, I'll maybe post it. But there's so many people like that. Jill Zimmerman does great. She's super active on IG. Those hypermobile yogis, they have a very manicured IG account. Like, I let those people, I'm like, you have the time and money, have at it in your little studio and all that. Like, I just don't have the mental capacity to do it. So I have content on there that says some stuff, but I'm definitely not very active on it. I have some articles written on my website. I do have online courses as well on hypermobility and yoga, just basic hypermobility courses that they can get on my website, which is just fitwisesf.com. So Fitwise is FITWIZE, SF as in San Francisco, .com. So website, IG, but again, I've been trying to get back motivated, right, to do some more content, but I did get kind of a flurry of new clients. And so that sort of, these people I'm going to put my attention to.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, social media is a full-time job.
It is.
And I just, oh my gosh. I would spend like 45 minutes. I'm like, it's just a picture.
It's so true, though. You're like, I've been standing here for an hour.
It's like, nope, don't want to work here right now. I'm like, what?
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's sort of, and also just the sort of the moral sort of ethical of IG and social media right now. sort of.
Yeah.
It's a battlefield out there.
And abysmal, so it's sort of a moral.
Well, Catherine, thank you for spending your time with us. We appreciate you coming on. Some great information. Definitely, like I said, we're trying to get more awareness out there, especially to newer coaches, newer trainers. And if you have clients that are hypermobile and you really don't know how to train, please reach out to someone that has expertise, who has a lot of experience dealing with that demographic. So
they can reach out and consult and be like, I just have a question. What should I do with this? Like, I love doing that. Just talking to people and yammering on about it and talking like this.
Well, thank you very much, Catherine. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
And to all the listeners out there, until next episode, be good to each other. Thank you for listening to our podcast. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, and whatever platform you're on, either Apple, iTunes, or Spotify, please, if you could leave a review, we'd appreciate that. If you have any questions that we can answer for you, be sure to leave those in the comments also.
If you're looking for more information on our education, our products, please go to www.stickmobility.com.
And also hit that subscribe button to that YouTube channel. And don't forget our live Instagram classes 3 times a week. If you want to join in, grab your sticks and hit that 45-minute class.